Flirties, on the show today, we welcome Dr. James Ellis. Dr. Ellis is a psychologist who shines a light on one of today's most urgent issues, loneliness. Through his practice and Instagram page at Loneliness Doctor, Dr. Ellis is turning cultural truths into hope, one conversation and one post at a time. Today, we're diving into the roots of loneliness, the paradox of feeling alone even in a crowd, and how we can create more connection in our lives. Hi, Dr. Ellis, and welcome to Flirtations today.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thanks for being on the show. How are you doing?
Very well, very, very well. And I love the name of your show, Flirtations. It grabbed me from the moment that I saw it. So I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, fantastic. And here we are in the virtual Flirt Coach studios,
Love it.
which is just a computer and a laptop
Oh,
and a camera.
that's all we
But
need to connect.
yes, a little magic as well. That is all we need. I'm excited to get to know you a little bit more today at the top of the show and get into some topics that are near and dear to my heart as well. Connection, loneliness. We're going to be talking about belonging, community, of course, some dating, relationships, and some flirting along the way as well, I imagine.
Love it. Yeah.
So here at the top in the About You section of the interview, wanted to get to know you a little bit more. How about the inspiration behind your Instagram page at Loneliness Doctor? How you came up with that name and some of the things you talk about.
So I've been a clinical psychologist meeting with patients for 20 years now. So I do
Mm,
practice in a clinical capacity as a
mhm,
psychologist, meeting with people, individuals, couples, and families for psychotherapy.
mm,
And my passion has been relational psychotherapy with individuals and for couples.
okay.
And as we tuned more into the loneliness epidemic, and I saw some really striking developments in our field that
Hmm,
seemed to be pretty detached from the realities of the loneliness epidemic, I started to ask questions about who in my field is looking at loneliness as a
mm,
construct and is one of the key thought leaders or researchers in the field. And so I thought, well, that's
okay.
going to be me. I guess I need to do
Yeah.
that. This is my calling. And so I became the loneliness doctor. And that happened just about 6 or 7 months ago. So it's a very
Wow.
new project for me, but one that I'm extremely excited about.
Yeah, and growing quickly at the time of recording, crossing 30,000 followers on your page. Congratulations. This is so important as I feel like a lot of the content we see around dating and relationships and maybe what you see in clinical psychology as well, it's very like oftentimes externally focused. Yes, it's about the self, but it's also about how we create those connections and those relationships outside of ourselves too. But of course, we're a key piece of it.
Yeah, we're embedded in a social context. There's
Yeah.
a famous clinical psychologist who said a developmental and attachment oriented theorist who about 50 years ago said there's no such thing as just a baby. There's
Mm.
always a caregiver. There's always a community that it's born into.
Yeah, there's that saying. It's just a baby. I never thought about that, but you're you're so right. I'm curious. So, doing this work for 20 years, if you've noticed just some trends in conversations you've had in your office, like without, like I know you got HIPAA and patient-client confidentiality, all that stuff, but just some trends overall that you've seen. Like, have people always maybe struggled with loneliness from disconnection from some of these things we're going to talk about today, or do you think it's been a little bit more of a modern thing that's happened?
Great question, because loneliness has absolutely been a part of human existence since the
Mm,
dawn of time,
yeah.
and I can talk more about why it's a core signal in the body that we have that we experience today, and that
Mm,
is universal, no matter whether you're, I work with urban New Yorkers
hmm,
in my practice, but if we went to a remote rainforest and found an indigenous tribe there, we
mm,
all tend to have the same emotional experiences. And that's what my field has shown for decades. And so that's really important. But there is a modern component to it because the
okay.
evolutionary needs of community, of togetherness that ensured our survival for millennia are no longer there. If you think
Mm,
about it, we can survive alone in a studio apartment, ordering DoorDash, and live a long and healthy life with no threats to our our health. We will have enough nourishment. We will have heat to survive the winter. We'll be
Mm,
just fine. But our bodies don't know that yet. Our systems haven't caught up to that reality. Loneliness
mm.
is a signal that says, just like hunger says you need nutrition, you need nourishment, loneliness says I need connection, because connection
Okay.
has always meant safety.
Mhm.
So there is, in the modern world, there's a way in which we've been um, socialized to believe that, first of all, we're the center of the universe in the Western world, and
Yes.
to be a good son, to be a good daughter, means to find out who you are and go for it, and to really focus on yourself first and foremost, and even to ignore some of the, to override the longings we have for connection, whether that's for friendship, whether that's for a romantic relationship. That can wait, as long as you're pursuing your goals, as long as you're going for that degree or the master's program or that job. the,
Yeah.
the wife, the kids, that all of that can wait. So you
Okay.
just keep pursuing you. So there's been a modern shift that is hyper individualistic one, and I
Okay.
see this every day in the consulting room of my
Mm.
practice.
Okay. All right. What I feel like I'm hearing a few things. One being almost this sacrifice of connection in pursuit of like the goal, the dream, the job, the career, the degree, like being very externally focused and deriving a lot of our personal satisfaction and fulfillment from the things we do, from the things we achieve. And these are conversations we've had on flirtations before, kind of this like capitalism hijacking of right how we engineer our lives. And like I get it, you gotta pay your rent or pay your mortgage or put food on the table, that kind of thing. But
I
then
don't even think it's
what
about that as much
what
as it is about the belief that these truly are the things that will promote human happiness and satisfaction in life. And what it does
hmm
is then we get oriented to override those signals that are saying you need more people. We actually learn to tune them out, and then we're
mm,
surprised when we've gotten that degree or gotten that job or got obtained the apartment that we always longed for in the neighborhood we always wanted to be in, that there's something that's still not right. And I meet with people who are very confused as to what that is. Very,
okay.
very intelligent, very thoughtful, very open-hearted, very emotionally attuned people who that have just been so dislocated from that natural longing for others.
Okay. All right. I definitely agree with you there. It's like what's important, right? And certainly like deriving a big sense of the self, not necessarily from your relationships or your connections, but from what you do by way of
Hmm.
who you are by way of what you do,
Hmm.
right?
For
Like
sure.
that's I get that. I get that completely. I think that's plays out all the time in a lot of Western cultures. I imagine Eastern cultures as well. It's a global thing.
Modern cultures.
Modern cultures,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing I also felt like I was hearing was like now I have this picture of right the person, they live alone, they're in their apartment, right? Maybe they work from home and they
Mhm.
just sort of have created like this insulated life, and I'm struggling with feeling like that person is getting all of their needs met, right? Like where's the connection in that picture?
Right. It's often missing
Yeah.
another, and to add to the profile of what makes modern loneliness, we're also coming from smaller families. We
Yeah.
have less built-in connection. We
Mhm.
also have moved from our where our roots are
Mhm.
for opportunities. Yes, for very good opportunities sometimes to go to
Yeah.
school, to take a great job. So there's less built-in connection, more displacement, and social isolation, and then the
Mhm.
need to actually put in effort to go out and find new friends, new mates, and a real lack of skill at the same time. Benjamin, this is also coming. You know, we're starting to see it with younger and younger adults now who grew up with their faces here, not making eye contact. And so
Yeah.
social skills have plummeted. So sometimes,
Yeah.
even when they're aware of, wow, I just moved from South Carolina to Manhattan, and
Mhm.
for a great job, yes. And when
Mhm.
I was in high school and when I was in college, I had connection. It was built in with the, my family of origin and my
Yeah.
friends. And then I took this big job and I'm busy all the time. And I do have some free time, but I don't know how to find people. Literally just
Right.
a lack of skill in how to make new connections happen because
Mm.
they have grown up like this and not really developed social skills. These are some of the
Yeah.
facets: the declining birth rates, displacement, I guess I call it, rootlessness, and
Mhm.
lack of social skills, on top of the societal focus on hyper individuality,
Yeah.
that have really created this perfect storm that fuels the modern loneliness epidemic.
I've never heard that term rootlessness before, but that's so
It's a
true. As
big
I'm
one.
thinking about, yeah, some other conversations I've had. Yeah, the smaller families is one, and this, like, if you're moving around, even as a kid, it's kind of like, where am I from? Or maybe you immigrated to right wherever you are in the world, but it's not like where you were born, and so how you start to build connection and community and friendships in a place where you're like just trying to kind of fit in a way. It's like it's a lot to think about.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I feel like it's across the board, where I imagine one of the biggest questions you get, regardless of location, age, gender, sexuality, like, how do I meet people? How do I make friends? I feel like I get this question all all the time.
Yeah.
And the how is actually pretty straightforward. You have to leave your house.
Yeah.
So what's happening though? Why is it actually so hard? Because the how is pretty simple.
Yes, the how is simple, and this is where there's different reasons, and this
Yeah.
is where why I don't just have one video out
Yeah.
there, because I have to touch on everyone's blocks. Some of the blocks are can be things like social anxiety.
Absolutely.
I'm
Mhm.
nervous about putting myself out there. Some of them are an awareness of lack of social skills.
Mhm.
Some of them are also, in a similar way, a misunderstanding of the essential ingredients to find a relationship. Some
Mm.
people will come into me and they'll say, "Yeah, I went to a meetup group and it was kind of like a waste of time."
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think, like it was a multi-day event, or it was multi-week, and no, it was like just a one-off, and I went there and I don't know, I didn't really click with anyone. So
Mhm.
what else should I do? And why would you think that you would go to a one-off event of people who don't know anyone, and like the stage is not set for connection at all?
Right.
So
Right.
you also have to kind of be aware of some of the things that facilitate connection. One of which is repetition. One of which is, I also had someone who recently said, I signed up for a movie club hoping to meet people. So they would like classic films were screened at a movie theater. I thought, well, you don't talk to
Uh-huh.
anyone. And, like, you really thought
Yeah.
this was
That's
going to be somewhere where you were going to meet people and form
right.
new connections. So we also have to be realistic. And then I'm also aware, I started tuning into some of the things that my patients would say, and I would hear time and time again, which is, well, I have people in my life, but I'm always the one who reaches out. And I just said, I'm not
Mm.
going to be that one anymore.
Mhm.
Or another kind of myth I hear is, it just feels like so much work to form connections now and to keep friendships. And so and I just feel like if it takes work, it's probably not worth doing. And I think, well,
Hmm.
why? Sir, a lot of things that take work are very much worth it. And
Yeah.
because of those facets of the modern loneliness epidemic that I mentioned before, it is harder. It takes more
Yeah.
work than ever. Of course, it's
Yes.
when there's less people, less built-in connections, you're further away from everyone. I live
Mhm.
600 miles from my closest family members where I grew up, so
Mhm.
I spend a lot of my vacation time and my son's time off school
Mhm.
traveling to go see family members who are all over the world, and that takes work. It means I
Yeah.
don't get to, go to the Caribbean and relax on
Yeah.
the beach in my vacation because my vacations are spent staying connected.
Right.
I think that's another thing that is difficult for people to connect, is that friendship should be a source of fun, of effortlessness, of vitality, and and security, and all of those wonderful things come from work at this point because it's
Yeah.
not built in, because we're not coming from big families staying in the same town we grew up in,
Mhm.
where all of that's kind of held for us. It
Yeah.
takes a lot of work, and eventually we get there. Eventually we get to the fun part, but
Yeah.
it
I mean,
does.
relationships of all kinds, whether you're dating or forming friendships, they all require work. And yeah, I'm glad you highlighted some of the whys behind why it's difficult. Because I definitely have the social anxiety piece. I've really worked very hard
Mm,
to not have that be a barrier to just taking myself out on a solo date, like going to see an improv show by myself, a movie by myself, like doing something on my own, kind of getting out of this waiting for when mentality, this waiting for when I have the friend, waiting for when I have like the just right opportunity, the just right moment to do something where I feel
yes.
like, 100% kind of thing. It's maybe you're more introverted, and maybe those two things, right? Social anxiety and introversion happen at the same time for you, like they do for me. Like maybe you're living in somewhere where you don't feel safe, or you don't feel accepted, or you feel
Right.
like there could be this, yeah, this safety element
Mhm.
at play too. So like recognizing that all these things and more are true. And I want to come back to a couple things you were saying. It's like I feel like we want things to happen instantly,
Mhm.
right? We're very much all a part of this instant gratification culture, and we also want things to be easy. We
Yes.
want things to be convenient. And the repetition piece is you have to keep you have to keep showing up to create connection, and it's not always going to be balanced.
Exactly. 'Cause I just did a video about this maybe a week ago, about
Yeah.
the kind of combating this culture that we're raised in for instant gratification, and it plays
Hmm.
out all the time, and and
Yeah.
we're only going to go further with that, with tech and AI. I mean, we're only going
Yeah.
further down that. So to we can have everything at our fingertips, but this is one thing that we can't do. I mean, I do think, I am someone who is optimistic about dating apps, websites, like
Oh,
how technology can actually help support connection, and we can find connection
absolutely.
through. I met my sweetheart on Match.com
Hmm.
15 years ago.
Mm.
Um,
Hmm.
and I did online. I actually also did a video about that not too long ago, about my online dating experience, because I dated rigorously for 6 months until we met. And I've met other friends back in the days of AOL chat rooms who are still very good
Oh
friends.
yeah.
So we can use technology to help bridge those
Absolutely.
voids, for sure. But you're right, Benjamin, that there's no way of doing this in the modern world, of being a connected person with strong social health, without putting in a lot of work. Even yesterday, I went to meet a good friend for dinner. She lives
Hmm.
about, I don't know, probably a little less than an hour away. We meet in the middle. So it's about a half-hour drive. Sometimes there's traffic.
Hmm.
And I'm so excited to see her, but just the thought of getting into the car as it's getting dark, and
Yeah.
I just there are a million reasons right now to say no, but I put
Yeah.
one foot in front of the other, and I'm so glad I did. Once we were face to
Yeah.
face, once we met at the restaurant, we just had a dynamite time, as we always do. But
Yeah.
it felt like effort. I'm not gonna lie.
Oh yeah, I've been in that space before. Like, wait a second, it's cold, it's dark, it's raining. I don't want to get dressed, right? I could catch up on my favorite show, maybe like do whatever, anything that anything but going out. But
Yeah.
so often it's worth it.
And then, some of the people that you might talk to, you've had this experience, I've had this experience, but a lot of the people I talk to, they go out to try to meet someone, and then it fails. Nothing
Yeah.
materializes, and then
Yeah.
the discouragement starts to build.
Totally.
And then what people do with that is also can be very different. Some people really personalize it. Some people blame the other. The people that they've met, they blame humanity at large, and then they
Yeah,
get into
yeah.
sort of a victim mentality about it,
Mm,
and that's something I try to help people overcome as well.
yeah, and that's part of what this conversation is gonna be about too. My mind's going a mile a minute. There's so many things I want to ask you, but I think I want to come back to something you said a few moments ago about this kind of hyper individualism, this hyper independence, this kind of I don't owe anyone anything kind of mentality, right? Like, I feel like I see that play out all the time. I see videos over and over and over again, like basically saying the opposite of what we're saying. Don't talk to strangers, don't flirt, don't put yourself out there, right? Just what's the point? What's the
Mm.
point if you can't even know if someone is like for me, like cuz sometimes I think this like does this person like are they homophobic? Do they even believe in my right to get married? Like why should I even put myself out there for someone that
Mm.
may hate me, you know? I
Well,
think a
yeah,
lot of us are thinking that.
yeah. I mean, that's also that's kind of gets into some of the societal and social
Yeah.
hypervigilance because you know what it is, and what we're kind of talking around here is that there is a vulnerability in handing over part of your heart to someone else. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as a relationship without risk. There's no such
Yeah.
thing as connection without risk. We can get hurt. It is it's a place where, and most of us have experienced relational pain at some
Mhm.
point in our lives, whether it was from our family of origin, whether it was from a kid on the playground in preschool or kindergarten, or
Yeah.
whether it was more sophisticated in those awful middle school years. We know
Yeah.
that other people can get inside of us and really hurt us. So there
Yeah.
is that vulnerability, and then there are different ways in which our culture foments division. Our culture and media sources love to exaggerate the intensity of division and promote so
Yeah.
fear and all over and on screen, on the computers, digitally. It fear produces engagement. It makes people want to
Mm.
more.
Yeah.
So that's a
Yeah.
sad reality that we're living in, that it makes people feel so different when, that's in my opinion, the benefit of working as a psychologist and meeting with people from all different backgrounds. And in a city like New York City, where people come from all over the globe, we
Mhm.
just kind of, I see people as so much more aligned than they probably think they are.
Yeah.
And I think the longing for connection, the fact that we are social creatures
Yeah.
at our core, cuts through all of the identity politics, all of the things that we see that divide us. We all long for connection.
Yeah.
Period.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you so much for that response. Yeah, I'm always gonna say smile, right? Wave, say hello, flirt if you want. Like that's always the energy I'm gonna lead with because ultimately it just makes me feel better when I feel like I can be vulnerable, even if it's something is just offering someone a smile, a compliment, something like that, versus feeling like I have to go around being very closed off and hyper vigilant and sort of always looking over one shoulder, which like I have to recognize that's an experience a lot of us have for many reasons. Could be things that have happened to us, things people have said, ways we've been treated, where we live. So I always try and like balance what is a real fear with still wanting people to embrace connection, right?
Embrace connection, and I love that you're talking about it at the micro level. This is something that
Yeah.
we're studying in my field of clinical psychology, what we call micro connections.
Yes.
And it's what we found disappeared, those of us who lived through the pandemic and lockdowns and
Mm.
being isolated at home. That's what we
Mm-hmm.
missed. We missed the
Oh.
smile with the cashier, or
Oh.
yeah, the barista, or the newspaper stand, or the
Yeah.
walking down the street and giving a wave to someone that walks their dog. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we realized how critical those connections are. There's always
So
a push
important.
in my field to want to say it's all about what's deep, and deep connections are important. But so are these
Yes.
little micro ones. There's a vitality in them. They make us feel alive.
They're incredibly important. I call I've made some videos about micro flirting. So it sounds like there's
Micro
some sim
flirting. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I love
yeah,
that.
some
Yeah.
similarities as well. It's these in the moment, like you're not expressing interest in someone just because you think they're attractive or hot or you want to get their number or go on a date. It's like there's no expectation. There's kind of no point other than to make a connection.
Make a
And that might be it. This you
Yeah.
may never see this person again. So what?
Yes, yes. And that's why I love your broad use of the notion of flirtation and flirting, because there's so
Yes.
much vitality in it. And it makes me think of Esther Perel. She often talks
Mm,
about small talk being a platonic flirting. I think that's what she
I
calls.
love it.
I love this notion too,
Yeah.
because I hear so many people when I talk with them about building their social health and expanding their social world and going to cocktail parties, going to work functions, going to
Mm.
mixers, whatever it is. And I don't know, 8 out of 10 times someone will say, "Oh, but that means small talk." I hate small talk, and it's become sort of something that everyone just sort of bands around like, "Yeah, I hate
I
small
hate
talk,
it too. Yeah.
hate it." And I just think, and my question is always, well, then how are you if you don't if you don't have a built-in connection through family
Mhm.
or work or some other place, how are you going to meet anyone? Like, where does it start? You don't want it to be perpetual small talk, of course, but it's an
Exactly.
important bridge, and it's one that I think we should learn to have fun with. Even
Yes.
here where I live, I don't know if it's the same where you live. When a bunch of people get together, New York is a very career focused, industrious place. So
Mhm.
if I was meeting you at a cocktail party, the first question would be, "So what do you do?" And
Yeah.
does that happen
Yeah.
where you are? Is that pretty universal?
I think it's a yeah, it's a pretty universal icebreaker or something,
It's an
about the
icebreaker.
weather or something like, "Oh, right from around here," kind of thing, or like something like that. Yeah.
In New
Mhm.
York, it's 100% of the time.
What
What
do
do you
you do?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's 100, and everyone always acts so annoyed by this, and I actually think it's a great question,
Yeah.
because it's just a starting point. What you do if someone says, "Well, I really found my passion, and now I am a clinical psychologist that is addressing the loneliness epidemic head on," there's so much you can
Mm.
expand on there. Or if someone
Yes.
says, I'm just clocking in and clocking out, and then I call it a day. There's something in that disappointment or in that loss.
Mhm.
There's a story about what could have been. There's
Yeah.
still a vitality in there that you
Mm.
can ask about. So it's a wonderful starting point that I think starts to reveal something about the other, if you're open to going there in the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you brought this up. I did a whole episode recently on small talk because I
Oh,
think
did
it's
you?
such oh yeah, it's such an invaluable skill that is not really practiced. I think it's looked down upon. It's
Yeah.
kind of like the redheaded stepchild of connection. Like, oh God, gross. Why would I want to do that? What's the point? Seems like a waste of time. And it's not just a skill. It's not just a bridge, like you said. It's a way to explore vulnerability in a way that is can be like more platonic, right? Like it's a
Yes.
way to just talk about something you're interested in or ask questions that like what do you want to talk about?
Right. It's
Yeah.
in most settings, it's very low pressure. It's low stakes.
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
just lean into the low stakes of it and have fun.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I love that part of small talk as well. And this was I had on my outline here. I wanted to ask you I mean, talk about this. Recently listened to an interview with Esther Perel and Simon Sinek, and Simon asked Esther, "What is one skill you think Gen Z should have as they're entering the workplace?" And she said, "Talking to strangers."
Mm,
Right? Very interesting.
absolutely.
It's a lot of
Absolutely.
what we're talking about today.
Yes, yes. But
Because it's 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 just such it's relational skills are. I mean, they're going to change your life.
They are.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I have a 10-year-old son, and I often think, I mean, he's a very naturally social kid, but I notice, it's common with when a teacher is assigned to ask about, oh, who's their teacher going to be, what's she like, is,
Mhm.
oh, she's more serious, or she's not as fun, or she doesn't have a sense of humor, or she likes girls better than she likes boys. And I'm going to try to get my kid out of that experience. And I always think, like, I don't know why parents stress about that so much. I mean, maybe there are some legit reasons, but
Mhm.
my son has certainly had teachers who dovetail with his personality more than others. But I think that's a
Sure.
good experience to have, to be exposed to a variety of personalities, a variety of interaction effects. The more exposure we have to other people, to strangers, to how they organize themselves socially, the more
Mhm.
skilled we're going to feel. Yeah, like when we enter the workplace, when we're on a date, we can assess human interaction differently. We
Mhm.
can assess ourselves in it. How does it feel to be in this? How does it feel for me to be in this? How do I use these dynamics to leverage what I'm going for here? So that makes
Yeah.
a lot of sense here, and the more exposure we have, the better. I always think it's I try not to interfere when my son is going up to a cashier in the store and
Mhm.
talking or asking for some product that he wants. I want him to
Mhm.
really, or even sometimes when I see that he's kind of not acting in quite the appropriate way, and he might get reprimanded. Like, he
Yeah.
needs to see that happen, right?
Yeah.
We can't. Sheltering doesn't help, and also, of course, this has been a big thing in parenting that I think also is fueling the modern loneliness epidemic, is the idea of
Huh.
helicopter parenting. That
Oh, okay.
parents cannot stand to see their children suffer in any way, so they come in and handle all of the problems for them.
Mm,
And
yeah.
children grow up not navigating their own problems. Even it's crazy to me, because I was in a couples therapy session. This was probably a year or two ago, and we were focusing on the marriage, on really
Mhm.
important elements of the marriage. And the wife said, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm getting a call from our daughter, who's at school. She forgot her homework assignment, and she's having a panic attack in the bathroom." I
Mm,
think that the daughter was in maybe seventh grade.
okay.
And she said, "So we might have to end this so I can get that homework assignment to her." And I thought, okay, well, I'm not here to give parenting advice necessarily. This is about the couple and the marriage. But are you sure
Right.
you want to do that? Oh, yes,
Uh-huh.
she's a straight A student. She takes these things really seriously. She's panicking right now, and I'm gonna help her out here. And I thought that's so interesting because I'm 46 years old now, and this woman, these parents were about my age. I said, remember how when
Okay.
we went to school, there were no phones. Once we got to school,
Yeah, that was it.
it was our responsibility to handle our day. It was our
Yeah.
responsibility to look a teacher in the eye and say, "I'm so sorry that I left my homework at home," or "I'm so sorry that
Mm,
I actually forgot to do it." And to face
mhm.
those consequences and to feel like I know how to deal with them, to walk away from childhood and say, "I know how to deal with these things." But if your parent has always come in and rescued you and helicoptered you out of the crisis and
Yeah.
handled it for you, you leave childhood feeling really anxious of, I don't know how to interact with people. I don't know how to fight my own battles. I don't know
Mm,
how to solve my own problems that need to be resolved interpersonally.
right. Okay, this is really interesting as someone that's not a parent, right? I'm a cat dad, but I'm gonna helicopter parent the the mess out of my cat Sugar. But I think there are some parallels with what you're talking about and technology, right? Where I also love that technology can be a tool for connection, but I think it absolves us of accountability. We don't
Yes.
necessarily have to think for ourselves, right? If we're just getting on chat GPT and like they're thinking for us, where's the me in this? Like where are
Yes.
we? Where's our agency, our autonomy, our critical thinking, our independence? Where is
Mhm.
it? I think it's I think we're doing ourselves a huge disservice by over relying on technology, right?
Yes.
But it's
And
really interesting because it's not going anywhere.
it's not going anywhere. I know I did a video
Mm-mm.
about that. I made a joke. I'm not a psychic, but if there's one thing I can predict, It's that this is going to get worse.
Oh yeah,
Whatever
100%.
the negative effects of technology are, it's only going to get worse. Technology is going
Yeah.
to replace more and more and more of human interaction,
Whew.
and we're going to lose social skills if we're not careful. So we have to just accept that fact and start course correcting.
Yeah, even as something as simple as, right, you just go to your fast food restaurant and maybe you just order from a kiosk now, and maybe pretty soon, like, only the workers are in the back and like a robot like arm just comes up and like, here's your here's your bag of food, right? There's value in those micro connections, and it teaches you how to just like, maybe they're out of something. Can you stand up for yourself and ask for something else or change your
Right?
mind? Ooh, maybe I want to go to that other place because I was really feeling like I wanted a burrito and they're out of tortillas or whatever, right? It just helps you pivot, helps you think for yourself. It helps you just be more accountable. And in those interpersonal relationships and interactions, if like someone said something offensive or that hurts your feelings or vice versa,
Mhm.
navigating those conflicts, right?
Yes, yes.
I don't think we know how to deal with disagreements and conflicts and
True. That's true. Yeah.
it's yeah, more and I mean, to some extent, but more and more we just sort of like write people off, disappear, ghost, block,
Yes,
delete,
yes. And this was a big
right?
thing. I started as a psychologist 20 years ago, and in my training, I started in a university counseling center, and
Mm,
there was a big question at the time: why are we seeing so much more anxiety? Why are we? And then it took a while for
mm,
us to understand children are being parented differently. This idea of the helicopter or bulldozer parents, where children are not experiencing adversity, and or if they
yeah,
are, they're not tasked with handling it themselves and feeling that sense of accomplishment of I worked through it, I handled it. So then yes, other people become scary, and avoidance becomes really appealing.
yeah, yeah. All right, let's spend some time here. I want to just talk about a few terms that have come up today. The biggest one, perhaps loneliness. I mean, we've been talking a lot about it, but how would you define it?
Great question. So, loneliness is a complex social emotion. And it's in the research world, it's defined as the subjective experience between the type of connection that we want and what we actually have. So, it's an
Mm,
individual. This is the idea of being feeling lonely in a marriage, which some people feel like is the most intense loneliness of all.
mm,
Someone right there. There's someone I share a life with, but I'm not seen
yeah.
for who I am. I'm not understood.
Mm,
And that can be a really devastating form of loneliness. And then there's loneliness that is social isolation. I just don't have enough people. There's not enough people
okay.
around. But both can lead to that complex social emotion of loneliness, that pang that we feel.
Yeah.
It can come from not being seen, not being understood, not having quite enough, or just not having anyone at all, the social isolation piece.
Okay. That's really helpful where it seems like loneliness is tied to disconnection, whether in relationships and or disconnection with the self, and isolation really tied to withdrawal. Like I think a lot of us may relate to this experience of kind of feeling emotionally numb in a sense. It's got a
Mhm.
term, anhedonia, which I've been seeing a lot of videos about recently. This kind of I don't really feel anything almost,
Yeah,
you
and
know?
that's the way, I think one of the reasons why awareness is so important is
Yeah.
because it does operate kind of quietly. Even if you
Yeah.
think about a hunger pang,
Mhm.
it's your body saying, "I need nourishment." It's an uncomfortable experience. We're just so conditioned to understand what it is
Yeah.
that we get it. I mean, sometimes even still there's confusion like, "Oh, is that like my tummy's rumbling? Was that just gas or am I hungry?" Uh,
Yeah.
Still not like 100% clear cut, So loneliness is much more complex. You're right. It can often present as malaise, as anhedonia, as anxiety, as fatigue.
Mhm.
when we really look at it and
Hmm.
zoom in a little closer, we see that it's loneliness, and it
Yeah.
takes some time to start to build that awareness of oneself, especially given what we talked about, that we've often been conditioned to just override that for
Absolutely.
our whole childhood and early adulthood.
Yeah, the self-awareness piece is really important as we start to, I'm just glancing at the clock, start to conclude the conversation with a few more questions because there's a little bit more I want to talk about. I
Sure.
wanted to touch on the where external validation plays into this, and along with external validation, belonging and community, because there's this interesting thing that happens when we're growing up, and even as adults, we learn a lot about ourselves from other people, right? From how we kind of quote unquote fit in,
That's right.
from just that experiential learning, and whether or not we're good at something or not may start with what we receive externally. So that's why, I don't want to like completely poo poo external validation. It's not all bad. And yet,
No.
how do we not derive our whole sense of self worth, our feeling of where do I belong from other people, right?
Yeah, and I want to make sure I'm understanding your question.
Yeah.
Are you asking? Are you saying that can be a barrier to connection?
I think, yes, it can be a barrier, but it can also be a point of confusion, right? If we feel like maybe we only belong in spaces where like we're getting appreciated or we're celebrated, but
Oh,
like
uh-huh.
inside, we don't exactly feel like we're making the type of connections that feel authentic and vulnerable, right? And so, but we also learn a lot about ourselves from how other people perceive us.
Right, right. I mean,
Yeah.
this can run very deep, and it's a
I
complex
know it's
question
it's
to
very
answer.
deep and complex. I was like, do I bring it up today? But I think I have to.
No, yeah, yeah. I mean, we can lean into it a bit
Okay.
because this is ultimately, where we go in the process of psychotherapy over months
Yeah.
and months and months, because it can be so individualized. But if you think about it, I always like to look at a historical kind of evolutionary perspective. The
Okay.
idea is that yes, of course, we only used to be able to survive in groups no matter where, whether we were, Eskimo tribes in the north, whether we were, Arabian tribes in the desert or
Hmm.
rainforest tribes, Native American tribes. We could not survive alone. So
Absolutely.
much of our energy was spent being in a group, connecting to a group, and then remaining safe in a group. So if you think
Yes.
about the core emotions, shame, embarrassment, these are all things that are we evolved to have because they help us stay in a group. And we
Hmm.
often, we our sense of identity formed from the group that we were born into uh,
Yes.
for
I'm glad you
millennia.
said that. That's what my question was. I feel like really about. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and there can be, wonderful elements in that, and there can be limiting elements
Yeah.
in that. Who you were was not necessarily the life that you created. It wasn't governed by the life you were created. It was about who your parents were, what their last name was, what their trade was, what their religion
Mm,
was, what your sex is, what your birth order is. So
mm,
all of these things shaped who you were, what your identity was, and the village also held so much. But then we started to abandon that to a certain extent because we could rely on ourselves more. We had
yeah.
that luxury of being able to rely on ourselves, and then the cultural impetus to actually go find ourselves. All of that, and we were taught that all of this is irrelevant. The best thing you can do for your family is to go find your excellence and really excel, whatever that
Wow.
means. It's not about what we were, and there's a wonderful luxury in that. There's wonderful opportunities in that kind of
Yeah.
individualism. There's
Yeah.
liberation. But there can also be a lot of loss of and a lot of pressure. Now it's all on me. What once a whole village used to hold
Yeah.
is now all on me, and we can buckle under the pressure of that. But we can also. I mean, a big part of who I am. I left. My town in Ohio when I was 16 and went away to boarding school and basically never came back. And then I moved to New York,
Mm,
for 30 years I've lived away from my family, and there's
hmm.
who I am is governed by that, but there's also a lot that's lost by that.
Wow. I'm just gonna have to kind of come back to this. I mean, many parts of the interview, but that part
Mhm.
specifically, it's this pursuit of like coming full circle to where we started the interview, right? This
Mhm.
pursuit of the self, right? Yes, there's because that's there's so many messages. We're just that's a lot of what I feel like self help and spiritual healing and a lot of these. Uh, that's what a lot of what we hear, and yet what also can happen in that process is a lot of pressure, expectation, even a loss of the self as we pursue maybe who we feel like we should be. And I don't know. There's a lot there. There's a lot there, Doctor. Ellis. This is
Yeah.
a deep conversation as we typically have on flirtations. I've
And
just
it often
enjoyed
it
this so
then
much.
it influences the type of relationship. When we find that person, whether it's a best friend or a romantic partner, that
Hmm.
person has to become our everything. And that can also be tough when and I've been doing a lot of content recently about because I work with a lot of 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. What happens when your best friend finds a boyfriend? And
Yeah,
now she's less available to you, and she's doing what we want her to do, which is to move on in life, but it feels like such an abandonment. It feels like such a
yeah,
loss. We see people, frustrated and angry and devastated, and even blaming of their friend for not handling this right because all of a
yeah.
sudden he went from being connected to being lonely because so much was wrapped up in that one relationship.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. I mean, do you feel like you're seeing maybe not exactly a breakdown, but just a shift in perhaps collective consciousness around the type of relationships we want, where paralleling a lot of what we're talking about, it was this pursuit for the nuclear family, right? The monogamous one-on-one relationship that produced a nuclear family, like that was a part of all of this. That was what we were all working towards. Well, what if that's not available to you? Or what if that's not what you want? Or what if you don't fit into that? How do we start to consciously renegotiate what we value in our relationships if it's not that? I think a lot of us are having this conversation. I think that's one of the reasons, not the reason, but one of them we're seeing so much just kind of chaos in dating. It's not just the apps or technology or hookup
Absolutely.
culture. It's this as well, which I think a lot of us are thinking.
My simple answer to that is, of course, if you have a fulfilling spouse and family life with children, that's a powerful source of meaning.
Absolutely.
We evolved to do it, so it's very natural
Absolutely.
and it's very fulfilling when we do it. But and so the question becomes: can we still have a fulfilling life without loneliness if we don't take that path? And of course, the answer is yes. But the answer is
Yes.
always it requires a lot of extra work. It
No, I
just
don't want to hear that.
right?
All
That's
right,
the reality. Yeah,
if you
is
say
that
so.
it's gonna take more work.
All right, Flirties, I'm doing that work with you. We're gonna end here. I just have one more question. I wanted to touch on belonging as we conclude our conversation because as we're talking about connection, some flirting, relationships, loneliness, I think kind of the overarching perhaps word that keeps coming to mind, it's right here at the top of my outline, is belonging. Since trying to find our sense of self within others, within communities, certainly within ourselves, outside of all of that. But where do we feel supported, right? Where do we feel nurtured? Where do we feel connected? How do we get back to community?
It is a good question, and we have definitely, in the pursuit of hyper individualism, lost the sense of community. There's also a loss in religious life. That was also a big sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
So there can be so many different paths, but I do believe that belonging is important. And where I'm seeing people go wrong in the modern loneliness epidemic is trying to find belonging at work. And it's tempting.
Oh,
It's really tempting to say, well, that's going to
okay.
be where I belong. That's going to be my home.
Yeah.
And you even hear sometimes leadership say we're a family, and
Oh yeah, I've heard that before many times.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, do we have to do this? Because it's not a family. Everyone is there for very different reasons. Sometimes, we can find our bestie at work. Sometimes we can
Sure.
find our future spouse at work. Mostly, though, that's not the
We're
case.
we're there to
Everyone
get paid.
Yeah, everyone there, and you might just be there to get paid, but someone else might be there to climb. And so,
Absolutely.
so everyone's there for different reasons, and also sometimes you can be there with the best of intentions and an open heart, and other employees can be there with the best of intentions and an open heart, but it can be a pathological organization that is run horribly and falls apart, and you're then left with nothing. So it's not a great investment in belonging. A part of belonging, sure,
Mhm.
but it's not a stable or enduring one.
All right, yeah, searching for belonging at work. Thank you for bringing thank you for bringing that up today. This has been just a wonderful conversation. I really appreciate you being on the show today. As we wrap up in these final moments, any last thoughts or anything on your mind you want to share with the flirties?
One of the things I always like to emphasize to everyone who is interested in the subject, and most people are interested because they're experiencing it. I think this is why my channel has had so much growth, is
Yes.
because it's so pervasive.
Hmm.
And I want to always emphasize that loneliness is not a personal failure. It's a societal condition that we're born into right now, but it's one that we can take steps to work to get out of, and we should. It
Okay.
is work that is very much worth doing.
I agree. I'll be supporting you all listening, all the flirties and daters listening in that work, supporting your work as well. Dr. James Ellis, thank you so much for being on the show today. Final question: where do you live on the internet? Where can the flirties find you, follow you, and learn more?
Right now, I am just on Instagram, Loneliness Doctor. I am also on X, which I think is Loneliness underscore Doctor.
Okay.
But those are the two platforms right now.
I will have those links in the show notes below for this episode. Congratulations on your growth, and I will be supporting you from the interwebs from afar. Really appreciate you doing this, just being here to have this conversation about loneliness, connection, and so many other things. Thank you again.
Thanks, Benjamin.